There is a rule in Facebook that allows you to put only 20% of text on your image. This means that only 20% of the image's area of its square should contain text. Actually, in 2020, Facebook said that this rule is not more applicable, but people on the market say that this rule hasn't completely gone. There were some experiments that show that still, if you use a lot of text at your creatives, Facebook will decrease their reach. So I think that it's better to follow this rule, especially at your stories and at your newsfeed formats. Sometimes it's hard to avoid this rule at your right column images when you want to put some text there and you want it to still be visible, because images at the right column are pretty small. But for stories and newsfeed, I suggest you to follow this rule as it was before. And we have some tips and techniques how to calculate which amount of text do we have. One of them you have seen in the Google banners lesson, and another one is right here. So let's see how to calculate this. Let's go and see if our images follow the 20% of text rule in Facebook. Okay, so we have several tools for this. Let's start from the beginning. We have some banners and we want to calculate if they are okay with 20% of text rule. So the first method is to create this grid and to count how many cells contain the text. So if I have a square logo and I have 5 by 5 grid, so it's 25 squares in total, so 20% is 1/5 of them. So if I have the text on 5 or less squares, I'm okay with the rule. And if the text is more than on 5 cells, so in this case we have to decrease the quantity of the text. This is not exactly how Facebook operates. They use machine learning for this, but several years ago Facebook had the same tool to understand if your image fits this rule. At the beginning, let's duplicate our banner. And now let's add this grid. How to do it? I have a banner, a square one of these dimensions. So I want to create a little square that is 1/5 of this length. So if this is 1080, my square should be, I'll create a rectangle. I don't know, but I can calculate it right here. I just put 1080 divided by 5 and it says me it's 216. Okay, so I put it like this. Now I duplicate this image. Actually, this is not image yet, but we will create one. I select both of them and unite them. Now this is a single object. Now I export this as an image. I can use PNG format, but actually it's not that important because anyway we will use it as a semi-transparent image. But for now I will export this, and actually it's better to name it with some understandable way. For example, I used it here. It will be chess 1080 by 1080, and I export this image. Before using it, as you probably understand, we have to create a frame above our component and even one more frame. So now we have this frame inside of frame inside of frame, but we need a little another behavior. We will put put it like this, so now these frames are in the same place, and we will put these above our banner component. So this will be our chess grid, or just grid. Now I make the fill invisible and fill it with my image that I just uploaded. This one. Now I have to set another option. It will be tile and it will be 100%. So now you see that I have 5 by 5 grid. Now I make it semi-transparent, and I can count how many cells do I have under the text. So if I count here, it's probably, we can count it together, 1 cell, maybe 2, 2.5, 3, 4. So I think this banner follows the rule, and I can even make the text bigger. So I go here and scale this text bubble to make it bigger. And I think we're good with the rule. Let's see another way for square banners. I create duplicate of this banner. Oops. Okay, and if I have a square banner, I have a more easy solution. I just have to add those frames. Frame selection. Frame selection again. Reorder the frames. Now I fill it. And now I use the default image for filling. Actually, this is the chess image, so this is good for me. But as you see, it doesn't fit my size. So I have to choose tile option, and now I need to understand which scale to set. I will leave this formula for you. If your site is, for example, 1080, you have to multiply it by 1.25 and it will be your scale. So I just put this, and as you see, I have 5 by 5 dimension. I will make it semi-transparent and even less. And now I can count how many cells are under the text as well. So I leave this formula to you, but this works only for square images, because if you have this rectangle image, you will have to create this kind of cell. So let's do it. I will duplicate this file. Frame selection. Frame selection. Now I move this out and this on top of it. And what do we have? Actually, we have to create the same thing as we did here at the first example. And now we will create a rectangle with sides. Width is 1080 divided by 5, and the height is 1920 divided by 5. So here it is. And make another one. Now we make both of them single object and export them. So now we use it in the filling of this frame. And use tile option with 100%. Now we make it semi-transparent. We can name it grid. So now we can count how many cells contain the text. 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. So I think this is okay. This banner is okay. And we have another variant of creating some object that helps us to understand if our banners follow the rule. This is to create a single rectangle and to see if the text is placed in this rectangle. So let's look at the example. We have a banner 1080 by 1350 pixels. It's like this. And we have to calculate which sides of this frame do we need to check this rule. So we have to do some math over here. We know the ratio of the banner is 1080 by 1350, 1.25. If we name A the longer side, so B is the shorter one, so A equals B multiplied by 1.25. And from the other part we know that the square of this rectangle A multiplied by B should be 1/5 of the square of our total banner. So it's this. And we have a system of equations. When we solve it, we get that A equals to 604 and B equals to 483 approximately. And we got a rectangle, and if we check its square, it's almost the same with 1/5 of the whole banner. So we can create this frame, and we can, let's create it. Let's create a new frame. It is 438 by 604. Now I make a stroke, let's say 20 or even, okay, 20 is okay. And I will make it in the center of my frame. Okay, now I want, actually I can leave it this black, but I want to make it colorful like this. Make it colorful, I will use angular filling, and I will use other colors. So I have to add more points in this gradient. Something like this. And I move on this spectrum. I missed this. So it becomes colorful. Something like this. Okay, so now I have a frame to measure text levels at this kind of banner. Okay, as you see, probably this text and this banner is okay because almost all this text fits into the banner and there is a little left, but there is a lot of space in here. So probably this banner is okay. And what else do we have? We have different formats and we don't know which formats and which sizes of text do we have in advance. We know it only after we create the banners, because text bubbles can have different form. So let's see this example. For example, we have this very horizontal kind of text bubble, and we understand that this frame doesn't help us to calculate it very much. So in this case we will have to create another frame that will be more horizontal but still will take 1/5 of its square. When you create these frames for several banners, you understand that you have to calculate the size of the frame for each size of banner, and it's not that easy. As you see, we have to solve this system of equations, and I don't think that you want to do it all the time. So for this I created a Google spreadsheet that calculates this for you. Let's look how it works. So you have this file, and when you want to use it you have to make a copy because you will have view only access. So I make a copy of this file. I put it just to my drive. Okay, and the copy is created. Now I can use it. So what do I see here? I see some columns and some rows. The columns are some settings for your banners or for your rectangles, and the rows are for each size of banners. I created several formats for Facebook and Google banners, and you can find calculated size of rectangles already. And you can get your rectangle width and height here. So if you have a banner of this size, you will have a rectangle of these sides to get a rectangle that covers 20% of this square. Let's go to the file and see how it works. For example, we will use a story. It's 483 by 859. So I will copy my story banner here, and I will add a frame. Okay, I frame this selection, then I copy this frame to here, and I want it to fit my size. It's by 859. Okay, so this is the frame. But as you see, the shape of this frame doesn't follow the text, and it's not really that easy to understand if this text fits the rule. Especially for this, I created some more columns where you can set a ratio of your rectangle and get new proportions. For example, I want this ratio to be less vertical, so I will set it to 1. Where is it? It's here, 1.3. It shows it without. Okay, this is okay. So I have 734 by 565. Okay. Oops. Okay, and this fits my text much better. And now I understand that all this text goes inside the frame, and I understand that it follows the rule of 20% of text on the banners. So you can easily use this file. You can set any ratio of sides of your rectangle right here, and you will get your sides of rectangle for this banner format. I think this is pretty easy. I left you a lot more rows over here so you can play around with it and use this file. Okay, so in general, we know that Facebook has a rule of 20% of text. Actually, Facebook says that it cancels it, but as for now, even many of Facebook documents say that this rule still applies. And as people from the market say, this rule didn't go completely. So that's why we want to check if our images follow this rule. And it's better to do it before we upload these images into Facebook, so this won't be so time consuming. And we have two options over here to do it. The first one is to make this grid and to understand how many cells contain the text. We have two ways to do it, but I prefer this one because it is universal. When we create small rectangles, to use it in the shape of our banner. For square banners, we have another one to use the standard fill-in option and to use this coefficient to understand which scale to set for the tile of this image. And we have another option to create a single frame and to visually understand if our text follows the rule. So I think you will be good with each of these variants, and you should understand that you don't have to create all these frames each time, because, for example, if you have these formats for stories, for newsfeed or right column at Facebook, you will usually use these shapes, these sizes of banners over and over, and that means that you can create a component that will use these images, that will use these grids, and you don't have to create it over and over. You just have to create it once and then reuse it in your files when you need it. And if you create this type of frame, probably you just have to adjust ratio of the frame, and you have this Google spreadsheet to do it. So I think we're good with this rule, and let's move to another lesson about Facebook ads.